This is Season 3 of Flute Unscripted. Hi, I'm Caity Massoud, and I sit down with a new artist every week and share their uncensored stories with you. This podcast is brought to you by Flute Center of New York, the marketplace for flutes. Join us, subscribe, rate and review us, and please stay tuned to the end of this episode for a special Flute Center of New York discount code for our podcast listeners. Seth Morris is the newly appointed Co-Principal Flute of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. His journey to this highly coveted position is an inspiring one. Seth didn't even envision a performer's life at first when he was pursuing an education degree at the University of Kentucky. But as he put in the practice and score study hours diligently, he was shown just how far perseverance and hard work can take you. Seth earned his master's at the New England Conservatory, his doctorate at the University of Michigan, and was the principal flute of the Houston Grand Opera since 2012. Seth's passion for opera and ballet music has afforded him a depth of knowledge that came in handy at his audition for the principal flute position at the Met. I was fascinated to learn more from Seth about how the day he won his dream job went and his plans for the future. Thank you, Seth, for coming in today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me here.
And welcome to New York. Big congratulations on your recent win at the Met.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love it here.
Yeah. You're settling in just okay?
Oh, yeah. I always enjoyed visiting New York over the years, and it's just incredible to finally be living in the city.
Yeah.
And just experiencing it day to day.
Do you have to pinch yourself sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, it's kind of surreal to be here, but I love it. Yeah. There's always something new and exciting.
True. And I'm most curious about, your experience winning the audition and the logistics maybe of your day and that whole process. Because I know even here in the store, there's a lot of build up to the auditions, and we were hearing gossip every time someone would come in the store that maybe didn't make it through a round, or who it was getting narrowed down to. How'd you kind of keep all that chatter out of your head and just stay focused and in the zone?
Sure. So the audition was 3 rounds, and so I had a prelim round the day before and advanced past that, and then the next day was the semis and the finals together. And I think it was fairly easy to keep the chatter quiet because during the final day they took our phones from us. Yes. So we had no connection to the outside world all day long. And I don't think I even got a signal downstairs where the audition takes place. But I like to have my phone to listen to music while I'm waiting, because most of my audition is just waiting around. Yeah. There's so much dead time. So I listen to music, but they confiscated all of our phones. So.
Did that kind of throw you off a little bit?
A little, but there were a number of people there that I am either familiar with or good friends with. My partner was there as well, so it was kind of comforting to, be reunited in a way, even though we're all kind of gunning for the same position. Yeah. We see each other often enough, in the audition circuit or other venues, that it's nice to get to chat. And catch up. Right.
It's a little treat. You're all away from your phone, so you can't be distracted. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you say you listen to music and on your phone, are you listening to the rep that you're going to be playing in your audition, or do you like to listen to something completely different?
Oh, something completely different. Yeah. I mean, leading up to the audition, maybe I'll kind of refresh my memory of not necessarily the solo part, because I've been working on that for months, but the orchestral accompaniment underneath. Sometimes it's nice to have a refresher. But during the auditions, I either listen to something that's mellow to kind of calm me down, or sometimes I like to listen to loud pop music to kind of amp me up, get me excited.
What's your favorite? Guilty pleasure music?
Either Beyonce or Rihanna.
Yeah, I knew it. You were going to say it.
I can't help myself. It's just so good.
And now that you have that position and you're in the realities of having rehearsals and playing every day with the Met, is it everything that you were expecting it to be, or is it maybe a little bit different? And how are you blending in with the section?
Being in school over the years and kind of admiring the Met from afar, I guess I personally had always put it on this unattainable pedestal, and that everyone in the orchestra and in the company is just rock stars, which they are. They are so amazing at their craft, and sound incredible. But then actually getting there and getting to work with them day to day, there's no sense of ego. Everyone's just such a pleasure to work with that it feels really comfortable.
You've obviously had a ton of experience. You were playing in the Houston Grand Opera, which is where I first heard about you because I was living in Houston for quite a while. And I heard you play a couple times with the opera and the ballet. Do you think that the position of being a principal flutist in an opera or ballet company takes a different kind of personality? Do you have to, let your ego, leave it behind and be able to be flexible to the vocalists? Because it's not like your typical orchestral principal flute position. Or is it? Am I wrong?
Right. Well, I think there are certainly moments where we have to dial it back in consideration with the singers on stage because they are the leads in the opera. But I think certainly in a house like the Met is so gigantic that it often there isn't a problem with covering the singers, and so it's still very comfortable to play out and project and sing out just as if I were playing in a symphony orchestra on stage. But I think that depends with the actual opera house and the orchestra and the singers on stage, because sometimes singers, they just like any instrumentalist, they can vary in their depth of tone and their projection, or maybe it's not so much an issue of whether they can or can't, but just artistically, maybe they want to pull back quite a bit dynamically and go for like a really nice pianissimo high note. And so then we have to kind of follow that. So yeah, I guess there is some give and take. We can't always be the diva in the flute section.
Right. Do you think your knowledge of all of that or just the repertoire kind of gave you the extra edge to win the audition?
Well, I've always had a passion with the opera repertoire in general, and I guess right alongside my practice for symphonic auditions, I enjoyed practicing the opera excerpts, even though I wasn't necessarily preparing for an opera-specific audition at the time, like when I was in school. But it was always for me, it was a nice break from the standard Mendelssohn Scherzo and Firebird, etc. Even though those can pop up on opera or ballet auditions as well.
Yep.
I've always enjoyed practicing and listening to opera, and I think I just try to integrate that in my preparation for either the audition or certainly the music that I'm working on now for the job.
You were also, I read an article, you were talking about preparing for Kobe, which a huge honor. I mean, you and your partner, you were just talking about, were the two Americans to make it. And I liked when you were talking about your prep that you were saying it was just like any other prep for you, but you also were grappling with your HDO obligations, right? And practicing for your gigs and every day. What was that like? And it seems like that's a crazy amount of repertoire.
Yes, and I was preparing for the Met audition at the same time.
Oh my God.
The Met audition was actually the week before my first round at Kobe.
Wow.
So they overlapped quite a bit. I just have a tendency of piling on projects. I think my philosophy, I guess, throughout school and after was having several projects to work on just to keep me, I guess, fixated on specific goals, and maybe one or two of them will pan out. And then I can really hone in on that. And so I guess preparing for Kobe and the Met at the same time, yes, it was, I don't know if I recommend it for everyone or anyone, but it was overwhelming, but it also pushed me to another level to really hone in my abilities and musicality And I was just playing so much because I had my job with Houston Grand Opera and ballet, and then doing recitals in preparation for Kobe, and then mock auditions for Met, etc. So I think just that constant playing and cycling through all sorts of different repertoire was really helpful in the end.
Like keeps you fresh in a way. You don't get stale on just the same rep over and over.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, others might feel overwhelmed, but you just
just
pile it on.
I certainly had moments of feeling overwhelmed, being overwhelmed, but I kind of knew that was going to happen, and I always wanted to do an international competition, certainly Kobe, and I always wanted to audition for the Met, so I knew that if there was the opportunity to do either or both, that I just had to do it.
Yeah.
And luckily I was able to do both. I didn't get to pick the scheduling of them happening almost simultaneously.
Right, but you never know when that would have happened again,
exactly.
So you had to go for it. Sure.
Yeah.
I really love your articles too that you write, and I think they're very interesting. And in one of them you talk about how you and Ben are really supportive of each other practicing, and really encouraging, and no jealousy, and well, maybe no jealousy. I don't know if that's accurate. You write that. And how was that at Kobe for you too?
I guess I should start. Yeah, there's no sense of jealousy, because I think we both have our individual career tracks that keep us busy, focus on what we're doing in our respective areas. And then at Kobe, it was intense to cycle through the music, but we had separate rooms, so I think that helped to isolate ourselves from one another, since we were technically competing against each other, and playing some of the same music, because the first round I think had maybe two of the same pieces, and then one changed anyway. But it was also reassuring because this was my first international competition. Ben's done a couple others in the past, and so it was nice to stop by and have that support system.
Yeah.
And
it can probably be stressful too to be alone at these things as well, I would imagine.
Right.
So
yeah,
it can be nice to have a familiar face.
Definitely.
Yeah. Seth ended up advancing in the 9th Kobe International Flute Competition to the second round. His past competition successes included first prize in the National Flute Association's Young Artist Competition, James Papousakis Memorial Competition, and the Myrna Brown Competition. He also won the bronze medal at the Houston Symphony's I'm a Hog competition. It hasn't all been easy wins for Seth, and he did share with me some of the sacrifices he's had to make over the years. You also mention in some of your writing about making sacrifices in your life to achieve your dreams. What would you say is maybe one of the biggest sacrifices you've had to make? Just delving in here into the...
There are a couple really big ones. The first one, I think, is fairly obvious in terms of a social life.
Yeah.
I mean, just the nature of what we do, we have to spend a lot of time by ourselves, either in the practice room practicing or at our desk or computer studying the music. So that can be kind of isolating. And for me, the other big one, and this varies from person to person, but for me, a big sacrifice was financially, because, and I don't think there are that many people that talk about this sort of thing, and I think it's important for aspiring musicians to take this into consideration. But my family supported me as much as they could, certainly emotionally, but it was always kind of a struggle for me to do everything that I wanted to do, because going to auditions, doing grad school auditions, competitions, all of that requires a certain amount of funding, and so I ate a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to try to make ends meet, to be able to do the things that I wanted to do. I always try to put my career first, or like I was saying, the projects that I was working on, that was my number one goal, and everything else was kind of contingent on making that goal a reality. So I think the financial aspect is something that can be overlooked, but is certainly an important one to consider.
Yeah, that's going to be a major sacrifice for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that kind of why you started with an ed degree as well? Were you thinking that might be another viable career choice, or was that just to kind of bolster your degree experience? I mean, was performance not enough?
Well, I started as music ed
Mm-hmm.
In my undergrad, and I really wanted to be a teacher, and I still would love to be a teacher. And it just so happened that halfway through my undergrad, I was just practicing a lot more, I guess, even when I started as a freshman. And I had a couple friends that were already doing the dual degree of
Mm-hmm.
performance and education. And so I decided to add it on and really push myself performance-wise, because I guess, to be honest, I never considered a performance track. I was always in the education track. And so it was kind of nice to be working on both goals at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same way even when I was working on my doctorate. I was, working towards being hopefully a college flute professor and still taking auditions,
Right.
orchestra auditions and competitions. And so I guess I've always had this kind of dual path, and hopefully something will pan out. But I don't necessarily think one is greater or more valuable than the other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've always been passionate about teaching and performing as well. So it was kind of whatever whatever was in the cards for me.
Yeah. Speaking of teachers, I know that Michael Tilson Thomas is a mentor for you, and you were at New World for a while. What was that experience like at New World, and what advice would you give now to your younger self?
New World was amazing, and I loved my time there. I'm kind of sad that I only had 1 year there, but winning a job was
that's the goal. You want to get out eventually.
Right. Yeah. But it's incredible because it's like a summer music festival, but all year long, and it mimics a professional orchestra track in that you do a different cycle of rep every week. And certainly working with Michael Tilson Thomas was kind of a breath of fresh air, because he's so uplifting and incredibly knowledgeable and young at heart. And I think he incorporates all of that into his conducting, what he says to the orchestra, how he kind of molds the fellows at New World to really kind of think outside of the box in their playing, and not just play the standard way of interpreting an excerpt that we all work towards when we're preparing for auditions and that we tend to hear on recordings, but to really push ourselves emotionally and artistically. And I think that was a big help for me, a big boost in preparing for auditions.
You skipped over any advice for your younger self part?
For my younger self, to believe in your musical self, as corny as that might sound, because it's easy to step into a new situation and feel like you're the underdog, or you need to adapt to everyone around you, and you can kind of lose sight of your musical voice. And I think certainly in an environment such as New World, everyone's kind of on equal footing. And so I think maybe we all had that sense of uncertainty. So I think I would probably go back and tell myself, just do what you're doing.
Stick with it.
Stick with it, and don't back down, and maintain your musical voice. Just be confident and convincing.
When we were talking a little bit about practicing, and you were saying we spend a lot of time alone, I think for a lot of people, I know myself included, I can be introverted, and so that's not necessarily that difficult for me all the time. But still, there's a lot of musicians that I think fall into the same category of, you feel introverted, and the stage kind of, it doesn't feel like a foreign or strange experience, because you're in control and you get to share what you want to share. Do you kind of feel that way, or do you feel like you're extroverted and it's really natural for you to be just soloistic and out there?
Oh, I'm very much an introvert. Kind of like what you were saying. I like the alone time. I think before I was just pointing out that that's something that maybe people can take into consideration.
Right.
That, you're alone so much. But I would agree that I think I feel very comfortable stepping out on the stage. Certainly, I would say for the most part, when I'm playing solo, like solo flute, or with piano, etc., like in recital, I think that's where I feel the most quote unquote extroverted and just doing what I want, because I think, in that instance, you are the soloist. In an orchestra, I think there's the opportunity to do that, but there's a lot more of collaboration, which I also really enjoy, because like I was saying before, it's not just about you, yourself, and your ego and being a soloist, but it's how you can adapt yourself and kind of weave your sound in and out with other musicians. So I wouldn't say that I'm like, I would say that maybe there's kind of a hybrid in an orchestra setting of being like the extrovert and then blending a little more.
Right.
There's a little more play back and forth than just like being on all the time.
Sure. I also heard you might have a goal someday of recording a CD. Is that still something that you're hoping to do?
Wow, you've done your research.
I have.
I think I said that somewhere. I don't know. Yes, I very much would like to record a CD in the next year or so. A few years ago, I guess let me backtrack. My favorite opera of all time is Benjamin Britten's Peter Grimes.
That's a good one.
But I've actually never played it, and I've always wanted to play it. And it's kind of an oddball opera. It's not the standard Bohème, Tosca, Carmen that gets done every year, every other year. Anyway, but a lot of symphony orchestras perform the C interludes because they're just orchestral pieces. There's no singing going on. And so a few years ago, I arranged most of the interludes for flute and piano. Wow. Only performed it once. It's still kind of a work in progress. So I'm hoping eventually to edit that and refine it and hopefully publish that and record it. And so that would be the main project on the album that I want to work on in the upcoming year or so. Okay. And Ben, my partner, which I don't know if I've specified, but he's a flutist as well.
Yes, a fantastic flutist in his own right.
Yes,
we'll have to do a podcast with him too. I think he'll be here actually next year.
Oh yes,
I think
he's coming
so.
in January. Yeah. He and I have talked about doing a duo CD. When we were living in the same place, we were playing a lot of duo repertoire. So we kind of want to get back into that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Is that hard being so far apart too?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be lying if I said that long distance was a piece of cake. It takes some serious work, but we've done it for a while now, and we've kind of gotten used to it, and we know what works for us, and we talk every single day and visit back and forth. He's in California, so it's nice to get to have a change of pace from the hustle and bustle of New York.
New York and go to California.
Get
everyone's
the sunshine.
Dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you're missing the city, come on back. Speaking of the city, we just had a marathon. I know that you're a marathon runner and you're an avid runner. Is that an escape for you from playing? Is that maybe how you get away from it and clear your head for a little?
Yes. Running for me just checks so many boxes in terms of being a stress reliever, keeping myself healthy. And like you said, with marathons, it's a good goal for me. I found that after I was in Houston for a few years, and certainly, getting older, a lot of the competitions and things that I was working towards, they have an age cap of 30, roughly. Kobe was a little older. So I found myself wanting to work towards a different kind of goal. And beforehand, I would only run like a few miles here and there. And eventually I amped that up and ran 10 miles. And then I ran a half marathon. And then after I did my first half, I signed up for a full marathon. And I wish I ran the New York City Marathon a few days ago, but maybe next year.
Yeah, they're always next year.
Yeah.
Start getting qualified now and get your runs in. Yeah.
I'm by no means a fast runner, but I just love just being out running outside, and it's just a good chance to clear my head and not be cooped up practicing all the time.
Right.
I probably shouldn't say this to the flute community, but I'm not the kind of person that loves to practice hours and hours all the time.
That's funny, is that actually a lot of people have said that here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I was like that in school, certainly. Definitely during my master's, I remember practicing for hours on end.
Yeah.
Now it's, maybe 1 or 2 at most. And just enjoy life.
Yeah, you've deserved it at this point too.
Do something else besides playing the flute.
Right. Do you have any lazy activities? It seems like everything you do is very to the most extreme degree. Like with running, you can't just do a jog, got to do marathons. Is there anything you do that's just laid back and lazy?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly enjoy wasting time at home. I find myself watching a lot of YouTube videos or Netflix.
Okay, so you're just like the rest of us then.
Yeah. I love binge watching on Netflix. Great British Bake Off.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite. I'm so sad there's not another new season right now. I've watched them all.
Oh yeah. I'm catching up on the last one. I find that it's so pleasant.
They're all so nice. Yeah. Even if they lose, they're like, I'll try again next time. Yeah. It's not the end of the world.
Even though it's a competition, I think this is a good lesson for the flute community in general. And certainly my experience of doing a lot of auditions and competitions in the past, with this show, Great British Bake Off, yes, it's a competition, but everyone is so positive and supportive of one another, and they really empathize if something is not quite going right. And I think maybe we as flutists or musicians that are so fixated on our goals, like myself, can kind of take a note from that and just be like, we don't need to stress ourselves out quite so much.
Right.
It's just a cake, or it's just a performance.
It's just the flute.
Yeah. So we can support one another.
Right. And I love on that show too how they're all friends after the season's over as well, and they catch up. So I think it, like you're saying, it's in the flute community, we all see each other all the time. Everybody knows one another, and I feel like that's more important at the end of the day, as well as fostering good relationships instead of maybe having rivalries or cutthroat experiences, because it's just yourself that you're competing with, not necessarily the other people.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for such a great interview. It was so nice getting to finally meet you here in New York, and it's been a pleasure.
Great. Thanks for having me.
I'm certainly going to stay tuned to Seth's career to see what he's up to next, and hope that in the midst of all his rehearsals, performances, baking shows, and runs, he gets to record an album very soon. In the meantime, visit the Met website to see a full schedule of their upcoming productions and plan to hear Seth's gorgeous playing soon. Thanks to Seth Morris. Seth's playing was featured on this episode from his appearance at the Kobe competition, where he played Chantalinos by Jolivet and Paganini Caprice No. 11. This has been an episode of Flute Unscripted. This podcast is sponsored by Flute Center of New York. Visit their website at flutesforsale.com for the largest selection of new and pre-owned instruments. Use this season's promo code LISTEN for a special deal of $50 off any purchase of $4.99 or more. You can follow the Flute Center on Instagram and like them on Facebook to stay up to date on the latest events and masterclasses. Special thanks to our owner Phil Unger, the Flute Center team, and Stefan Huskoldson for our theme music.